A little while ago, you sent us your logos so that we could see if we could fix them. So in today's video, I've got 3 randomly selected logos. We're going to pull them into Illustrator and I'm going to see what I can do to make them a bit better. Let's get into it. Now, when thinking about fixing logos, I'm really going to just be focusing on 3 main things. The first thing is going to be the composition of the logo. So is the layout actually working? Is the spacing between the letters okay? Is the relationship between the icon and the text good? And I'm going to see if I can fix that up. The next thing is color or just application of contrast in that sense. So if the logo is grayscale or black and white, are we getting enough of the shape? Do we understand what it is? If the logo has got color in it, are the color applications good? Do I think the contrast is going to work? And then the last thing that I really want to focus on is overall concept and style. So, is there an idea to the logo? Am I immediately clear on what the logo is for? And can we do a better job of translating the concept? So let's go ahead, dive right into the first logo and see what we can do with it. Alrighty, we're jumping in with the first logo, and this one is for Caffeine UX Studio. And so the first thing that I'm going to note is, first of all, if the name Caffeine UX had not been in the logo file itself, I would never have known that this was caffeine.ux. Unfortunately, as clever as I think it is, the U hiding in a coffee shop is not clear enough. As a concept, I appreciate where this designer was going in terms of trying to inject meaning and creativity into the logo. I like seeing things done like this because I can see that you've thought beyond just customizing a font and making it look nice. You've actually tried to inject a concept. The only problem with highly conceptual logos like this sometimes is that they're actually really notoriously difficult to do. And so what we have here is the exact issue of non-legibility. And in the end, or at the end of the day, legibility is one of the most important things for a logo. And so the first thing that I'm going to want to try and fix is to make sure that the U is a bit more obvious and that we can actually get the concept that comes through here. The next thing is composition and layout. For me, there's a couple of kerning issues here, and kerning being the spacing between each of the letters. I'm seeing quite a lot of blank space, and the best way to check this is to actually turn the logo upside down and have a look at it as a shape, and I can already see that there is some spacing issues, and I can see that some of the letters are just too far apart and there's some weird gaps going on. And the next thing you can do to also check this, if you really want to test your eye, is you can take your logo, transform it, reflect it backwards, and have a look at the logo totally backwards, which means your eye stops reading the words and starts looking at the shape, which makes it a lot easier for you to fix kerning optically. And what I mean by that is there is such thing as perfect kerning, and is meaning there is exactly the same spacing between each letter, but it's not necessarily right optically. And what we're really trying to do as designers is use our eyes to optically align things so that they look right and that they're comfortable for the human eye, as opposed to being technically correct by the number. So first, let's make it back to the front, or back the right way. Now, you're going to have to take me with a pinch of salt here because I'm working with a JPEG. And so the first thing I'm going to need to do is try and transform it into some sort of vector file so that I can actually work with it. And once I've done that, I'll come back and we'll start off with our customizations. Okay, I've got an expanded version of this Caffeine UX logo. And so what we're going to try and do is see if we can get it a bit closer. So the first thing I want to work with, and I'm just going to ungroup all of this by going Shift Command G. I'm going to make a duplicate and I'm going to first work with the word. I intentionally don't want to replace the logo with a new font, even though I think perhaps I would choose a different font. I want to first see if I can give some suggestions to the designer of this logo for fixing it as it currently is, because I think that that's more beneficial. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing is I want to fix the spacing overall for this logo. So the first thing is going to be getting a bit of a better look. So now, obviously, because this is expanded, we've got some like weird shape things going on here. So let me see if I can fix those first. We're gonna grab the E, grab the I, the N looks all right, the E. The first thing I'm seeing is that the expansion of the eye hasn't gone according to plan. So I am just going to, for the sake of composition, replace that with an actual circle that is going to be a bit more beneficial. All right, so we've got our circles that we're working with, and we've got our A. Now, I think looking at the font, it does look like the A has that funny little thing on it. It does look like this could possibly be a custom created font. This looks like something that has been created. And the only reason I'm saying that is because the sizing of the letters looks custom. It doesn't look like an official font. I could be horribly wrong, but for me this looks like it could possibly be a totally custom font. So in that sense, you know, you could also be dealing with some limitations there. So let's jump in here. The first thing I'm going to do is just a quick eyeball of the composition, and I'm just really going to be using my arrow keys, etc., to move things in and make them fit a bit better. Now, I am seeing that there's like a little bit of a connection here in terms of the horizontal F and E, but for some reason, it just doesn't look 100% right to me. So I'm going to bring in some rulers and I'm going to see if I can create a little bit better layouts. So we've got that, and then now usually with letters like your C's and your A's, you overextend them on the baseline. So the round bits come down under the baseline and over the top of it, because optically speaking, that is what looks correct. If we have got a double word logo, typically I like the words to be a little closer together, because otherwise you end up with like all of this space in a logo and it just doesn't apply to things very well. Now, if I look at this, it looks like the C and the E were potentially taken from the same shape. However, in order for an E to work, it needs to do that, but a C for me needs to be a little bit more complete. So I'm going to see, sorry, pun intended / not intended. I'm going to see if I can't create potentially a slightly more rounded C, which I think will give the logo a bit more friendliness and may or may not look a little bit more professional. Okay, we're a little bit closer, but on second thoughts, let's hide guides. So if you want to hide your guides, it's Command and the little colon or apostrophe symbol on your keyboard. I'm going to just pick him up, move him across, see if the rounder C doesn't work better. Okay, the shape itself definitely works better, but it's still not quite feeling like the right C. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take this C, because I like the top. I'm going to reflect it, not that way. Okay, horizontal reflection, great. Then I'm going to take a triangle across both of these guys. And the first thing I'm going to do is delete the bottom off of this one and the top off of this one. Join them together. Take my direct select tool. I'm going to kick Command J. Oh, would you look at that? Doesn't work. Let's use Shape Builder instead. Direct selection tool A, and I'm just changing these to curves. And then what I might do is move them both in. And here we've got a slightly better C, but without it being too fancy. Okay, much happier. Now, just compositionally, you can already see that it just feels a little bit more united as a letter form. Now, the next thing we're going to do is quickly tackle in the UX symbol. Now, the first thing is, I love the idea of the coffee cup. I'm not 100% sure it's obvious enough. So what I think we might be able to do instead is use, for example, the width of the N here for consistency's sake. Bring that across, possibly drop it down slightly. And then what we'll do is we'll round the bottom corners, because what I'm looking for is the U shape, but also a cup. And then, typically speaking, I do like the X, so that's technically all right. I just want to see what an X in maybe a different font would look like. Medium, condensed, maybe just medium. Now what I want to do is, obviously because I said what I said about the baseline, is we want to drop the U just below the baseline for opticals. But the next thing I want to do is actually try and create a version of this which gives us the outline as well. So another thing that I'd maybe like to try is adding in the handle, but I'm going to fit it perfectly into this space. I can make this a bit narrower. Now to narrow it equally like that on both sides, I'm just holding down Alt for interest's sake. So now we've got the cup again, but honestly, for me, it's just looking a bit strange. So I think I'm going to go back to not having it. And instead we've got that. Now what we could probably do is add our little swooshes, and we will have a much better composition. Does this look like bacon? Well, I must be honest, I don't totally hate that, but what I do notice is that my X is still too broad. So if I do want to just optically check this, I can just add an outline to it and just see, so that I can see how many pixels. So 1 pixel, okay. So I'm going to just offset the shape again. Okay, so this is my solution. This could look like a smiley face, who knows? So let's grab the original, let's grab the new one, and let's put that here next to each other and compare the two. Now, what we can do, I think, is let's just do the last step. We're going to expand these. I'm going to take this guy and turn him green. And I do think this is a bit of a flat green. I'm wondering if we can't add a little bit more personality to this green and just go with something like that. And then just to test contrast, let's check out our logo on a green background. Oh, look, we've got all sorts of funny things that have come with us. Okay, so we've got some interesting stuff going on here. And then we take our logo mark again, turn it black. Actually, maybe white is good. And we can have that as black. And there you go. But I do think maybe for the green background, your rule should be the logo all in white. Okay, so those are my fixes. That is what I recommend that we should do. Basically, the focus is on fixing the composition and layout by just adjusting that kerning on those letters, making sure that that's working better. So we've got some cool ideas going on here. And really my focus was just trying to align the concept better to the design. So making that U a little bit more obvious, but not losing the coffee cup, and just simplifying things. But basically the idea is that we want to fix the composition overall. And so that was my take on that. So let's jump into the next logo and see what we can do with that one. Jumping into the second logo, we have got one that is called Brand Wisdom Solutions. And this is a pretty cool design. It caught my eye from the beginning, but there are a couple of things here that also, in terms of those 3 pillars for today's review, that are just not working 100%. So what I'd like to tackle first, and the beauty of this file is that it's actually an Illustrator file. So I'm just going to be working with this one and this one, but actually, you know what? I think I'm going to work with this one because I like the fact that it's a single color. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come and grab the dark color so that I can work in it in a single color. And I think this is another piece of advice for any of you designers looking to create logos and to design logos, is that Always start in black and white. And I know it's boring, and I know that color logos, have a lot of impact, and especially in the digital world, you have the luxury of playing with color, but there's just no better way to check contrast and layout if the logo is in black and white. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just play with a dark color here. And now there's two key things that I'm noticing. The first one is that this icon is actually a little bit too close to the word. So what happens is when I'm zooming out, I'm getting a weird area here where everything is sort of bunching together. Now, theoretically, I assume that this designer intended when the logo gets really small for this icon just to be used, which is fair. So technically that's not really an issue, but you do still want to check things like scale and just zoom out a little bit and have a look. The best way to scale something is to actually create an artboard that is 16 by 16 pixels, because that is the typical size, 16 or 32, something like that, 32 pixels by 32 pixels at 100% view, so it's normal view, and then you put the icon or the logo in that block and you see if you can see what it is from your naked eye, because that is the size of a favicon or a favicon on a web tab window, which is that funny little thing that shows up usually here-ish on a website browser tab. And if you can't see what it is, then it's not going to work. So the next thing that I'm noticing is the three different fonts. Now I know Brand Wisdom is in one single font, so that's technically fine, and then there's Solutions, but it looks like three different fonts to me when I'm looking at it. And ironically, even though Solutions is smaller, it is also fighting for attention along with the icon and this underline. And so I'm thinking maybe there's a couple of ways for us to simplify this and to come up with a solution that might be slightly stronger in terms of content and layout. The first thing I want to tackle is the icon. So I'm going to pull out the icon and I'm going to work with him down here. The first thing I'm noticing is that there's a bit of inconsistency in the gaps. And so I want to see if I can try and resolve this. The first thing is this bit over here, which is just coming a little close to the C. And even though when you're looking at a person's hand, you do want that sort of anatomical accuracy. In this kind of a symbol, I don't know if it's 100% necessary. So I think there's two ways we can tackle this. The first way is by taking a circle, popping it in the middle here, and then I can take that and make it slightly bigger. And then basically what my goal is here is to just remove those paths. Now there is like a super easy way to do this by expanding the path, but I just want a bit more control. So I'm just going to do it like this. And I'm going to hit Alt for my shape builder tool. And I'm going to take these pieces out so that it's equal. So now we've got a bit of contrast going on there. And the next thing I want to do is pull this across and just fix this gap. Now you'll see what I'm doing, and I mentioned this in another video the other day, is that when you're working on concepts, you want to make as many duplicates of your work as possible. So you want to keep duplicating because you always want to be able to go back. And very aptly, a watcher left a comment and said I only did it once throughout the process, and it's so true. It's a rule that I sort of have for myself throughout my design process all the time, but I don't always follow it. But I think definitely try, because it's one of those things that you always want to go back to. And you just want to be able to sort of compare where you've been. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go, this is option A that I'm working with. Okay, because I've got two sort of solutions that I want to try here. And then this is the part that's bothering me. So it's just too close. I know that usually the symbol looks like that. But either what we have to do is close the gap, or we have to make it more obvious. And I think the best route is probably to make it a bit obvious. I also think that we could possibly make these look a bit more like fingers if we do it like that. Maybe we add a little stroke and just see what that looks like. Does that look a bit better? Compositionally, I wonder if it wouldn't be better if these hands were turned, or fingers should I say, turned a little bit more that way. And now we can double check this, because obviously it's been built off the wrong circle, but I think that angle might work a little bit better. So if I bring in my rulers, which is Command R, and I pull in a guide, then I can see that that's not lined up. But we can just do this optically
like that, and maybe move them across a bit more. Hide that guide. Aha, okay, I think we're a bit closer. So I want to go down to 100%. So that's at 100% there. And then I'm going to go to height and width are connected. Good. And I'm going to change that down to 32. So now when I'm looking at this from zoomed way out, I can actually see the symbol. So I know that this is probably going to work. Oh, see, now we've got all sorts of funny little creatures and critters and whatnot. I'm seeing a little problem over here. Okay, so let's fix that. I'm going to grab that anchor point. I'm going to hit minus on the anchor point over there, which will get rid of that. Just select here and see if I can see anything. No. Okay, cool. Object path. Okay, here's another trick. If you have got way too many anchor points and you don't want to go and hit it with a smooth tool, which can actually be quite inaccurate sometimes when you're dealing with perfect geometric shapes, what you can do is you can go to Object, Path, and Simplify, and this gives you a whole bunch of options to work with. But the only problem is that obviously it like mushes up your shape, but this is a really good tool to use if you're wanting to just simplify your paths. This is really great for typography. Of course, you can do this and then you can go back and work on it. So we're not going to use that right now, but I just want to show you that all of those anchor points are obviously going to be unnecessary, but we'll just use them for now because just for time's sake. Okay, so we've got our little icon. I'm going to put all these other ones that I'm not using. Okay, so now I'm going to work over here with this guy. And now we need our typography. Okay, so working with the typography of this logo, I think now after I've taken that line, there's a few things that we can do. First of all, I really quite like just brand wisdom on its own. And if I start bringing in this icon again, then I think that we've got some interesting things going on here in terms of this layout. Now, I quite like it just like that. If I'm being really honest, but if your business is actually called Brand Wisdom Solutions, then we might obviously need to come up with a solution. Haha, for that. So I think the first thing I want to try and do is just type out solutions and just, this looks like it could be something like, yeah, it looks like it. Okay, cool. So it's Futura, I think. Well, definitely very close. What I want to try here is another layout. Compositionally, I think that this logo is not there's a lot that you can do with it, and I don't necessarily want to change much because I think it actually works. Say, for example, my only suggestion would probably be to try and see what this looks like in normal casing, so no italics or anything like that, just because it would add a little bit more consistency to the logo, and then you can bring in your solutions text. I do think that, having solutions exactly the same size as wisdom as in the original, so let's just bring the original across. As in the original, just what it does is it like whacks out the balance a bit, and it's almost too much. And I think when deciding how to scale things like this, you have to ask yourself, is solutions, the word solutions or the secondary word, as important as the main word? Okay, we are back and we're going to look at the third and final logo for today. And this is a logo for Rise Creative. And first of all, again, I want to commend this designer for wanting to bring in concept to their designs. So I can see that what they were doing here in terms of the creativity was to actually quite literally rise the logo and to give it that kind of a feel. I have a couple of problems with this logo, however. The first one is that when we zoom out, it becomes quite difficult. I mean, you can still read the word, but there's like a white block, and then there's like the S has been twisted and there's a bit of a cut out. And the problem is that this is just, it's a bit shabby. There's like a bit of mistake over there. And then this font for creative doesn't stylistically fit with the Rise. And so what it looks like we're trying to do here is that there should be like quite a strong main font. And I actually feel like what happens with creative is that it's too isolated. It stands on its own and you don't sort of get this unified feeling. The next thing is that gradient logos, especially grayscale gradient logos, can look quite outdated, unfortunately, and we're kind of moving out of the single like dark to light tone gradient era, and we're sort of more in that like dynamic mesh gradient era where we've got like lots of multiple colors that are blending together. And that's not what's happening here. So I'm going to see if I can find a simpler way to tackle this, and I already have some ideas. So let's see if we can take the concept of this logo and do something with it where it's going to look a little bit more refined and a little bit more contextually interesting. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to type out rise the same way they've got it. Just delete those other two random text blocks. And I think what we could probably do is use something. So that's not going to be quite right. Let's see if we can find a font that's going to work. All right, so we've chosen a font, and this one, for future reference, if anybody is interested, is called Archivo. And as far as I know, it is a Google font. It is free. Then what I'm actually going to do is take exactly the same font and type out the subtext, so that we've got similarity happening here. And now what could probably happen is we could just use one of the lighter versions of this font to create the balance. So the first thing I want to do is work with this rise copy. And the first thing that I'm thinking is that we obviously want to maybe reduce the tracking, because what they've done here is brought it nice and close together. I'm not really sure why. And I think this is the interesting thing about making choices typographically with logos, is you really want to make sure that your decisions are contextual. Why are we doing this? Why are we bunching the letters together? Why have we turned the S? You know, there are situations where it does make sense optically to shift the layout of letters, and you just want to do it because it looks good and it's great for composition. But for this logo, it looks like there's a concept here, and I can't work out why the letters are so bunched together. As a recommendation, I think we'll just go with a more subtle approach where we are going to reduce the kerning of the letters, but we're not going to do it too much. So I'm going to leave a version of this type over there, the live type, so that I can come back and use it when I need to. And then I'm going to bring in this version, and I'm going to expand this. And I just went to type and create outlines to do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move the S in just a little bit more, and same with the E, so that we've got, you know, optically a accurate composition. Now, the next thing that I find interesting here, and I'm going to show you now because obviously this is an official font, is that you can see that the S drops slightly up and down so that you can, so that optically it looks right. So I just wanted to show you that. The next thing is obviously we want to come up with a way to communicate the concept of rising. And I had this little idea to use something, or to do something interesting with the inside of the R. So the first thing I want to try, so let's just line this up. Let's just do it optically with a white, and then we'll move it. And then I'm going to go to my scissors tool, and I'm going to cut these two anchor points that I can take off the bottom of the circle. I have no idea if this is going to work. Let's try this quickly. I just want to make it look a little bit more like a, does that look like a hotel bell now? Okay, cool. So anyway, you can basically, there we go, that's a bit better. So you can see essentially that what I'm really trying to do is get rid of that gradient, because it's not going to scale very well, and it's also just not going to work. If you ever wanted to apply something like that to collateral, printing gradients is virtually impossible. Now, you could technically produce a version without that gradient drop shadow box thing, but then you lose the essence of the logo. So really what we're trying to do is create a version that is going to work no matter what. And now the next thing I want to do is I just want to try one other idea by leaving that there and just taking this guy and putting him over here potentially, which might be quite nice. But I think maybe because we do need to bring in the creative, is that you could look at doing something like that. And then you've got an interesting layout going on over there. And it's more about the whole concept of it being rise. And now this is quite nice, because when you're naming your business and when you're coming up with sort of brand names and things like that, the simpler your name is as a business, the easier it is to create memory for people when it comes to recognizing your brand. The next thing I want to do is bring this one down and see if we can integrate creative. Oops, wrong text. Now I'm keeping this live text there just for now. What I want to do is just make sure that that's centered. We could possibly add a bit of tracking in just for this. I want to see what it looks like. Cool. So you can see that I do a lot of in and out, in and out, in and out to just check the visual composition of things. I think that this might be a little bit high up on this, but there's that. The other concept I had was to leverage the triangle shape inside the Y here. Just draw that out so that it's equal. And then what I'm going to do is turn it around. And I know this is a little bit on the nose, but sometimes it's not bad to be a little bit more obvious. And what I really want to do is make sure that this lines up. I wonder if I made it more like an equilateral. Okay, obviously that's not like perfect. I would like to align it better to the R. Okay, so then the other concept that I had for the rise was to quite literally, let's do this. And then I'm thinking we create a triangle out of this guy. So I'm going to need to have that shape selected. Can I go to the eraser tool, make this a little bit bigger. Just want to cut him off over there. So what I'm essentially aiming to try and do is to create a alternative shape. Oh, I've ruined my triangle. That's okay. What I'm going to do is take that off. I'm then going to grab this triangle. I'm just going to align it this way and see if I can just sort of fake it till I make it. Maybe if I equalize it, does it look like an R? I don't think that looks like an R. But what we can do is just go and grab this shape again and put it back. So I'm going to line that up. And then basically what I'm going to do is just take these 2 points, pull them in, and I've got my shape for the middle of my R. Okay. But now it looks like a down arrow, doesn't it? No, now it looks like pies, doesn't it? Basically, we're testing all sorts of concepts and seeing if it can work. So I think the idea here is that the principle of it is that this just overall, you can see that when I zoom out, this creative just really gets lost. It's too soft. It's a rounded font paired with a square font. So it just, the pairing doesn't sit really well. Whereas if you use the same font just with different weightings and slightly different kerning or whatever, then you get a much stronger look. Also, when I zoom out, and excuse my screen here for just having a bit of a meltdown, is that you can already see that this is just a lot stronger in terms of contrast and composition. And if you were to now invert this as well, you will also see, and we'll do it twice. I'll see if I can force this one to invert. Let's put it here and at the top, and I think we can just probably try this by embedding it. Edit colors and invert. Now, obviously, you'd probably want to do a version which isn't maybe just straight inverted. You'd probably want to do it differently because obviously the gradient is now inverted incorrectly as well. So yeah, but let's just take this logo, for example, or maybe even this one or which one? Let's try the triangle one just for fun. Okay, and what I want to do is make sure that those are actually, so that that's a cutout. But essentially, you can see already that the contrast or the visibility of the letters is much stronger. What I've learned over the years as a designer is that sometimes being fancy and sometimes trying to add too much to a logo, especially a logo type, ends up killing the concept rather than adding to it. And I've just found that in my experience, the simpler you can make something, the better. And the rule with that is, can I say the same thing with less? So can I take something away and is the concept still strong? Does it still make sense? And in this case, yes. Is this the perfect solution? I'm not sure. Maybe what we need to do is try this version, for example, and bring that in. I'm not sure if that's the right option, right? It looks maybe a little bit too much like a sunrise, but it could be a nice concept in terms of talking about new beginnings and things like that. I am just noticing compositionally though, that these little guys are a little too far up. So I think they need to come down a bit, and that's going to probably be, if anything, just a little bit stronger. Okay, we'll group this. Let's center it into this square, bring in our creative. Let's try the one that's a bit more spaced out, just to be a little bit more close to the original. Let's center it. And then, you know, we've got something that might be a little bit more conceptually strong. You've got it. It can apply to various different things. This is sort of like a sunrise concept. Of course, you could take any angle with this, but that's the angle I chose to take. And I think compositionally, we've just got a bit more space to work with. You've done a little bit of customization to the type, so it's different and it's unique, but we're not overdoing it. We're not forcing it. We're not sort of cutting out things that don't need to be cut out. This gap here is just not going to scale well. And I know that you tilted the S to make it fit better, but it just makes the logo feel imbalanced, unfortunately. But nice concept, nice idea, and really nice name for the business. So if you're looking to improve your skills as a designer and you really just want to make your logo stand out better, or you're wanting to do a better job at doing simple, basic, beautiful logos, it comes down to your technical ability and your skills as a designer. Things like composition, color, layout, typography, all of the basics. If you can get a grasp on those and you can spend time really honing your craft, you will automatically become a stronger designer. After that, it comes the conceptual thinking and your ability to work with clients. But really, first and foremost is your skill as a designer. And if you want to get to those 5K projects, 10K projects, it starts by getting the basics right. So this is a really great opportunity for me to recommend our brand new Flux Academy course, Core Design Skills, which is really going to give you all the basics that you need to become a really great designer. It can be applied to branding and to web design and pretty much all aspects of design in general, because if you get the basics right, you'll be a strong designer no matter what. So please go and check that out. A link will be in the description. Really hope you enjoyed this video, and please, to the designers who did these beautiful logos, there's really no criticism here. I can see that you're learning, and I really appreciate you having the guts to send me your logos. I really hope you like what we did. I hope I did your logos and concepts justice. If you want to see more videos like this, please leave a comment down below and let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers for now.